Yes, sir.
Ryan Chute, how you doing, buddy?
I am fantastic. How about you?
I am doing well. It is great to have you here on the podcast. I can't wait to dive into some advertising philosophies, thoughts, myths, maybe.
Mm,
Um, I do want to talk about radio as well in this interview because you and I both believe that some people believe that there is no such thing anymore, but you and I both know the secret of that. I want to talk about digital space and basically everything advertising. And let's certainly talk about that home service contractor.
absolutely.
All right. Generally on the program, I've got contractors. So I talk about how they started, why they got involved
Hmm.
in their business. So I'll do the same thing. How did you get involved in helping small businesses get their name out, their image, their message? How'd you start that?
Well, I started in retail. I was in the gulags of retail, from furniture stores to the automotive industry. And as my career evolved, and I managed to make my way across the world to help companies out in both sales and marketing, across the my gosh, 4 different continents, 9 different countries. I realized that I needed to be more true to myself. And one of the biggest frustrations that I was hitting was how transactional things were. And when I visited Roy Williams at the Wizard Academy in Austin, Texas in 2015, I had a transformational moment. I had that time when you just go, "Wow, everything that I thought I knew has just been torn apart and thrown asunder." And what that left me with was this huge, wide, wonderful opportunity to do the thing that I do well transactionally in sales activation, but also pair that in with some really, really brilliant brand marketing that just helped make more money easier, and create a path that I didn't. Yeah, I kind of realized it was there. Like we all realize that brand matters, but it's really just hard to figure out why and how. Um, yeah, and that's the world that Roy brought me into over the next 2 years. He taught me an incredible amount, and then asked me to become a partner. In 2017, I did, and I quickly grew an affinity to the contractors in the
Mhm.
space. I love their attitude. They're helpers, like the Fred Rogers helpers. Um, they're they're good-hearted, giving people that work their butts off, and they're salt of the earth, and it just really kind of spoke and fit with me.
Mhm.
Where retailers were way more grindy and transactional and twitchy and kind of annoying when they really just kind of couldn't get out of their own ways with the short-term thinking. Contractors thought a lot more relationally, and in particular, the essential home services. The electricians and plumbers and HVAC technicians who understood that relationship matters a lot
Mhm.
for that durability and, frankly, for that profitability.
It does. I'll tell you, I think that the individuals working in the blue collar home service contractor space are salt of the earth people.
Mhm.
You get people who might be in a white collar space, might think that they're better than they are and so forth. And it's
Mm.
interesting.
Yeah.
I went to college. It's great. I spend the majority of my time with people in the blue collar space. I know more multi-millionaires who can turn wrenches than I do people who are pencil pushers anywhere. It's interesting.
Mhm.
Very
And
interesting. And you know what I'm talking about, right? You've met a lot of them, and anyone almost can be. It's an essential service for Pete's sakes. If you have plumbing in your home, you're gonna get it fixed, right?
yes, sir.
Yeah. And it's just a matter of putting the right systems together to have a great company, and then beyond that, you gotta have the right messaging. So let's talk about that. I believe a lot of home service companies, especially smaller ones, don't really know how to do it. They'll buy leads. It's easy.
Mhm.
Google, Facebook, Instagram, wherever. They're buying leads. Brand isn't really important to them at that point because they're just taking an order. Someone finds them. Can you fix my garage door? Can you fix my air conditioning system? My roof is leaking. But that only works to a point. And
Mhm.
I suggest that you need to build a brand so you can stand alone and you can unleash that tether from Google, for instance. And also, you need to learn how to purchase the right advertising, not just price wise, but the right message. So many people will buy, let's say, radio or television, or maybe even print if they're doing much
Mhm.
of that at all anymore.
Yeah.
And, maybe it's a direct mail piece,
Mhm.
and they're not that involved with the creative. They'll just let someone do it. And then they're like, well, that radio campaign didn't work.
Right.
Yeah, but there was no call to action. Whoever voiced it didn't voice it well. You can go down the list. So you see this stuff every day, but you can help people with this.
Yes, absolutely.
Mm,
And it comes down to a fundamental misunderstanding of what marketing actually is and what it's supposed to do.
mm,
Um, Ultimately, when we think about marketing, most of the time we're thinking about lead generation or branding. Well, there's your first mistake. We're not just talking about those 2 things, we're talking about 3 things, and the missing part is the presence to which we get, found. So the question is, do you want to get found in their moment of need for the first time, or do you want to get found before their moment of need and be chosen at their moment of need? So we have 3 big buckets. The first bucket is brand, and it's not brand. Brand is a misnomer because everyone has bastardized that name.
mm.
What it actually is brand messaging, right? What message are we going to leave resonance in the brain with? And how are we going to get from short-term memory to midterm declarative or working memory to long-term memory? And how are we going to anchor ourselves and become something of relevance, a landmark, as it were, in the chemical part of the brain for that moment when something goes bad? So, messaging is certainly the truck wraps and logos and pretty websites and the colors you choose and the fonts you choose. That's like 10% of what matters in a brand. I have done so many brands that have none of those things and none of them matter. They drive white vans, they have no lettering, they have janky websites, and none of that stuff matters. It matters, but not first. It matters after somebody actually cares about you. So make people feel, get a message right, and the logos and the truck wraps and the colors will all start to show up and represent. There's actually 12 major things that our brains use to process information. And until we've paid attention to all 12 of those and how we put them together to deliver an actual persuasive message, then we're just piecemealing it together and hoping for the best. So, real brand strategy is about understanding all 12 ways that the brain perceives information and then delivering on that in a cohesive way that makes sense, that reconciles, that makes people feel good. Then there's sales activation. Sales activation is the second real big part of marketing.
Mm.
Sales activation are the promos, the offers, the discounts, the coupons, the things that dangle out there that say, "Hey, try my thing," right? And all of those matter. But sales activation isn't lead gen and branding isn't lead gen. They're both lead gen. Branding and sales activation are both lead gen, right? Because one person is going, "Hey, I kind of want to buy from a company that I know, like, and trust." And another person is saying, "Well, I really don't know if I know them yet, so I wanna, like, maybe test the waters with something small before something big, and let's do that with a sales activation offer now." I've seen this across all different countries, all different industries.
Mm.
Anything that you've had to retail to consumer, to from service to consumer, I've been involved in it, and, uh I've seen all kinds of offers, and they're great, and some of them break the integrity of the brand. It's just like a person with a reputation, you know? Takes you a lifetime to get a good reputation, takes one thing to ruin it. Well, that happens in your brand too. That's the exact same thing that happens in your brand. So sales activation, absolutely critical part of your business. You have to have it, and you have to spend money on it, and you have to put it out there to, um, get new customers to try your thing. But what if we did that in a way that was respectful and protective of your brand's integrity? That's an option. And then number 3, presence. Where are you showing up in the places that your customers are going looking for what you sell so that you can capture the lead? So this is about presence for lead capture not lead gen. There is
Mm,
a huge misunderstanding in this because we've accepted this nonsense around the words that we use, but they're very misleading, and fundamentally self-serving to the person that's trying to sell you the thing, that's trying to convince you of the to give you their money, give them your money as
mhm,
opposed to somebody else. Well, with Wizard of Ads, we're not thinking that way. We're thinking like, we want you to give all of your money to all the right people who are going to do a good job in producing the digital presence or the sales activation or the brand messaging that you do. And we want to be the guys who control your brand presence. And oh, by the way, we'll negotiate your mass media for you because we've got 35 years worth of relationships and a national buying presence that allows us to give you a better deal and then pass that deal along to you because we don't take commissions.
mm. Wow. It's not complicated, but there's a lot of things to consider, like you said. And I find that the smaller the company, the home service company, the more challenging it is.
Certainly.
It's like when they're scaling from themselves from the one truck and one technician to the second, that 100% increase in the second truck and second technician can set them back to the first again. They're like, no, no,
Sure.
bad idea. Um,
Yep.
Once they get moving, though, it's it's easier to spend more resources financially and time and so forth
Mhm.
on different things. That what's near and dear to my heart is direct response radio, which isn't for everybody, but I think it could be for a certain size company because it adds to what they're doing. I mean, speaking of the know, like, and trust and so forth, and what's better than a lead? An appointment, and you can get
Mhm.
appointments from certain type of marketing and advertising that you
Yes.
can't get from others, where it's just a lead. Like, when you get a referral, that could be considered close to an appointment versus a lead, which could be a Google inquiry. So
Absolutely.
lead. And so let's talk about the differences between, like, a referral type lead that I like to call almost an appointment. Like I said, what I do in radio is when the person phones that contractor, they're calling for the appointment because they know a lot about the company and about
Yeah.
the product and or service. I think that's really important because the lead is a lead, and it could be a warm lead, could be a hot lead, but it's still a lead versus that referral. So what
Yeah.
can be done about people getting better, really hot leads or referral type leads?
You got it. Listen, the world that we live in is a world of duality. It's
Mm,
not it's not a hierarchy of archetypes. It's all of these whimsically nice, fun, interesting, and mildly helpful things like DISC and Myers-Briggs and, you know,
mhm.
what did, Socrates used. It was some other thing. Hippocampus used another one. All about trying to define people across the spectrum of personality type. All of that stuff is lovely, but relatively useless when it comes to actually figuring out how to do your marketing. Duality lives in our life, in our world, in everything that we do, and when we're looking at what actually works, it's going to be the relational people versus the transactional people. The survivors mindset versus the thriving mindset.
Hmm,
The fixed mindset versus the flexible or creative or growth mindset. We live in this world of abundance within our hierarchy, and we need to recognize that the people that we're appealing to are almost always thinking about what we sell from a survival perspective,
yeah.
which means a transactional perspective, which means a protection of resources perspective. Until you give a customer a reason to be relational, they'll be transactional. Why would they be otherwise, right? So if we want a really great lead, we go on to a Check a Pro show and we talk to them about why what we do is both empathetic
Mm,
and competent. right? So empathy and competence are the two fundamental ingredients of trust. Until we have trust, we don't have a know like trust factor. And if we don't have know like trust factor, it's transactional. You want relational customers, have them know, like, and trust you for when they invite you into the home. They're receptive to your suggestions, which is going to translate into the three most critical KPIs, the KPIs that are actually K in PIs, not just PIs. They're not just performance indicators, they're the key ones, and that's conversions, average sales, and profits. When we can get a customer to sit with us and decide to buy from us on the first sit at a higher average sale, resulting in more profits, we're going to have the good customers. Where did they come from? A relational mindset about how we're going to approach the solutions, which came from first demonstrating our empathy towards them. We're not going to club them over the head in our cave when they go to sleep tonight, right? And two, the competency, we are the hunter that can actually get the food for you and feed you, and we can thrive, not just survive. So,
Yep.
this is fundamental, rudimentary psychology, which is founded in our biology. And when we get those fundamentals right, by George, we can get some really great customers because we've conditioned them coming in the right way. That brand.
And it's really simple. We are complicated as
Mhm.
humans versus some animals like a deer and a bear and a rabbit. Um,
Indeed.
uh, we're a lot more intelligent, and that's the problem, right? We can
That is the
think.
problem.
It
It's
no, it
yet
really is the
people.
problem.
Yeah, it
Um,
is. Yeah.
I mean, it's
But we also have air conditioning, so, I mean,
yeah,
there's
exactly,
trade-offs.
exactly. And some of the primal things, or I guess all of them are still inherent in us. We have
Mhm.
changed the way we live our lives tremendously just in the past few hundred years. We
Yes.
haven't changed in who knows how many thousands of years, tens of who knows how long it's been, but we live
Mhm.
lives differently. But when it comes to, y you know, what turns us on, what we're afraid of, it's all the same things, except it's different. So today we may be afraid of getting hit by a car.
Mhm.
Before we were afraid of maybe falling off a cliff or having a bear eat us, that type of
Right.
thing. We should still be
Yeah.
afraid of both of those. So,
Yes.
um, but you're right, inside our brains, we are still cautious, we
Mhm.
still have needs,
Yes.
we wanna be protected, and these are things people just don't think of enough in messaging, in how they develop their brand, their marketing, how they go to market with advertising, even
Mhm.
maybe how they manage their own people and the customer, because everybody wants to be
There you go.
treated well, and I tell people this all the time, Ryan. I tell them that your customer, the consumer, doesn't really care about you. They care
Mhm.
about themselves first. So
Mhm.
you'll hear ads. We won the Pinnacle Award from the BBB 10 years in a row. My dad started this company 50 years ago, and he's a veteran. That's fine, but that shouldn't be the first thing that comes out. The first thing should be, you may have a problem and we have a solution, and we're here in your community to help you with that. That type of messaging, would you agree, is better than the, "Hey, we're great, so you should be attracted to us," versus, "We're here to help you."
Well, yeah, let's roll back to Simon Sinek's sage advice of, telling us what you do. What you are is that you've been in business for 50 years and that you're veteran owned. Um, why you do it matters infinitely more than what you do, and why you're in it needs to align with why the customer should give a hoot. Right? Because if they don't, then guess what? You're answering questions nobody's asked. You're speaking into an empty stadium. Let's talk about the thing that the customer cares about, which is exactly what you said. It's themselves, and rightfully so. Right? People are there to survive, to thrive, and frankly, to elevate their own identity within not
Mhm.
only themselves but those that they love and their greater tribes, however those exist in their lives. So if we recognize that we're really just trying to elevate the status of our people around us, be it our customers, our wife, our son, or our next door neighbor, or our customers, or our employees. And don't forget that one special person that you often forget about, yourself, right? That will be a thing that helps you deliver intentionally the thing that you intended to do to serve others when you got into this game.
I'm thinking if somebody was single and they walked into a bar and met someone they were interested in. Okay. So let's say it's a man, he's in a bar, he's interested in a woman. I think the
Mm,
worst thing to do is say, I'm rich, I'm good looking, I'm an athlete, I'm great, versus saying, I like that blouse, that shirt. Is that a
mhm,
such and such?
mhm,
Or anything more complimentary of that person because it's all about them. It always is. The most important person in any room is that person. So I'll
right.
say it on stage a lot. I'll be on stage and I'll ask the audience, "Who's the most important person in the room?" And they'll point to maybe me on stage. I'm like, "No." Maybe their boss sitting next to them. No, it's you. Trust
Yeah.
me. The most important person to you in this room is you. And if not, it may be your infant child you're holding. All right, so I'm not gonna argue that. But
Mhm.
for the most part, if it's people who you aren't closely related to, it's you. And a lot of people say, "No, it's not. I'm a people person." I'm telling you, it's you.
Right. That's right. Well, we often forget to show ourselves empathy and competence.
Mm,
We often forget to um, recognize, look, my purpose is certainly to serve my wife and son. Um, in my personal life, in my personal perspective, I am here for them, and to a lot of home service providers, contractors who are of that mindset, who are hardworking, salt of the earth human beings, they're doing it for their family. They're doing it for that little kid that came into their lives that they adore so much that they don't know what to do with themselves but to do everything they can. And frankly, for the first time for a lot of people's lives who grew up in tough, neighborhoods without the privilege and silver spoons, they're looking at it and going, I could actually make this happen by learning how to first be a technician and then a business owner. And you got to respect the heck out of that, and I think that there's a real reasonable way for us to be able to do exactly that for them, to make them rich as heck
mhm.
and to fulfill their dreams. And that first big one is to take care of the kid and the wife and the loved ones, and maybe it's a mom or a dad or a brother or sister. And it's often before them. It's often before themselves that they're looking for that because they know once they got that thing done that they can maybe start working on themselves. Well, let's do that together. Let's figure it out. There is a way.
There is. Um, Most home service professionals are small. It's like a
Hmm.
pyramid. It's like almost anything else, right? Um, there's a lot more down here at the bottom of that pyramid, that triangle, than at the top. What do you think's holding back a lot of small businesses that are, maybe up to 1,000,000 or even $2,000,000, but they wanna be a 20,000,000 or a $200,000,000 company? How do they get there? 'Cause it's difficult.
It is difficult. You know, Jim, I see it as a fundamental lack of understanding, usually because there's never been a conversation around it, of some of the key coping mechanisms that allow us to get past ourselves and get past the length of our shadow so that we're tall enough to ride the next ride.
Mm.
And we're not going to do that until we understand how to do it in a way that gets out of our own way. Let me give you a couple of examples. Um, one is motivation. When we understand the 10 most important concepts in motivation, which all fit beautifully together in a couple of simple little buckets, what we start to quickly realize is, oh, here's how I inspire people as customers, employees, as myself, as my kids. And when I can understand how to inspire people rather than look for compliance, I'm going to have more people doing more work for me that are ordinary people producing extraordinary results.
Mhm.
Well, that then gets baked into some of the rest of the fabric of our business. For example, I had this conversation this week with clients, and it was the conversation around curating your inventory. And with the curation of inventory comes the curation of your warranties, your product, your price, your payments. And when you curate a journey for a customer to walk up and down with your technicians, you don't have to be so salesy, that you can actually capture higher average tickets because you've taken them on a logical walk that looks nothing like all of the things that you're seeing out there in the marketplace today. That you can reduce your overall inventory so that you can get to market faster. You can also get to the customer's home for delivering that service faster. That you can reduce your inventory impact, and all of these things lead to a, a business that grows faster and accelerates growth by choosing what to lose, by actually taking away things instead of adding more to your inventory of things that you sell. These are all of the elements that we don't know exist because we've all talked about all of the things that always can be done, and we like to spread ourselves too thin and have too much inventory and have too many bits and pieces in our product price lists, uh, and make our compensations too complicated, and all of the stuff that makes your job harder as a leader because you're tugged away doing the merely urgent when you're unable to focus on the truly important. Well, if we did less things better, by George, we would sell more stuff. And our people would feel better about us because we made their life easier walking into the situation. And that's going to make it an awful lot easier for buyers to buy from you because it's just so obvious what to buy. And it's those two experiences, the employee experience and the buying experience, that make up your brand. Those are the stories we tell in our advertising.
How do you convey this to small business owners in the home service space when they're like, "Look, I turn wrenches. I want my phone to ring, and I'll go there and fix the pipe." You're, like,
Mm.
talking about all this stuff, Ryan, and I don't care. It sounds complicated, too much work. So how do you simplify it for them? And can you? Because maybe not all home service companies will embrace this. They'll say, I'm just gonna keep doing the shotgun approach. I'm gonna hit something, and I'm gonna stumble through it."
Absolutely, and so many do, and eventually they become frustrated enough that they stop and they listen to what we're saying.
Mm,
And it comes back to the very first thing that I spoke about when we were first starting this conversation, Jim, and that's that there's three buckets. There's the message, there's the sales activation, and there's the presence. And if we just curated our own solution as providers, right, to get you the solution that you need in each of those three buckets so that they work together instead of against each other, you'll get exactly what you're looking for: more leads, more high cap conversion leads, more good leads, quote unquote. And that's going to then trickle into your culture where you can curate your inventory and have a simpler sales process. And you can convert more at a higher average ticket and profit, which is going to allow you to hire more people and buy more trucks and be able to do it more to grow your business. But we all are rushing to this end solution outcome result, right? Before we actually focus in and apply the effort that is required to the means
mm,
to the ends. Until you've focused on and resolved the means to the ends, then you're going to continue floundering about, flopping around on the dock as a fish out of water because you are, right? You're asking, you're marketing to be a fish that climbs a tree, right? And a fish is terrible at climbing a tree, but it is an awfully good swimmer, right? Throw the fish back in the water and let it do what fish do instead of demanding that your marketing squirt out all of these leads that are supposed to magically appear and people are supposed to magically care about you for some other reason with zero context of whether or not you're a turd or an actual good guy. Because
Mhm.
guess what? Telling people that I'm a real good guy and we care more about our customers and we have convenient hours and convenient parking and we really care about your needs. Guess what? Everyone says that. No one
Every
cares,
no,
right?
nobody cares about anything about how, unless you can solve, their problem. Um, I'm not a wizard myself, but I have this crystal ball, and I believe we're headed for some type of economic downturn over the next 6, 18, 24 months. Probably nothing major. There's gonna be some complaints. My phone's not ringing. What I used to do doesn't work today.
Hmm.
But inevitably, the strong companies always seem to do fine. What's the difference between the ones that are always reactionary? When it's really good
Mhm.
out there, they're like, "This is great." And then when things tighten up a little bit, it's like, "Oh my gosh, this economy is gonna put me out of business." We've heard that
Yep.
many times. But there's other ones that are like, "Oh, we're still doing things, we're fine, and we're gonna weather the storm just fine." What's the difference there?
Mhm. There's always going to be 4 different contractors of the ocean of life. There's going to be the contractors out there that are surfing along, riding the lead train, and when the leads are high, they're closing their deals and they're making good money and everything's good. But then the wave goes away and they blame the wave, right? The marketers, the people who can't create leads out of nothing. And it's all lead based, so it's always going to be a problem of highs and lows of leads, the waves, right? Then we have the drifters, and they're just bobbing around waiting for leads to knock down their door and, do the thing. And these are very often the operators under 3 million who will continue to be good practices, right? The word of mouth of the quality work that they do is always going to be out there and they'll always be able to feed their families because of the demand that exists in there. They're not going to charge a lot, right? They're not riding any big waves, but they're also not going to lose a lot because they're not out there chasing it. Then there's the professional drowners. Now, I don't mean the occasional drowner. I don't mean the person who is uh, had a chemical or medical or emotional or financial problem at some point in their lives. I'm talking about the people who have a problem for every solution.
Mm,
The the sky is falling, and if it's not, they're sure as heck going to figure out how to make that sky fall on them today. Right, they're gonna walk under the tree that's about to have the branch snap off and crack them in the head. They're just going to be that blessed that trouble finds them, right?
yeah,
And the last one, the one that really stands out, the people who always seem to be the ones who always are lucky and successful no matter what the industry and the market has, they deal with their downturns and their upturns, but they're generally always going in the right direction,
mm,
and it's the navigators. It's the captains of industry, the market leaders, the people who are going somewhere because they stand for something. Now, the thing about a navigator is that they know for a fact that the North Star is the only star in the sky that does not move, which means they can navigate because they can point their sails and get hit and thrashed by the winds and waves of life and reality in your business. And none of it matters because they're going somewhere. And do you know who follows somebody who's going somewhere? Everybody,
yes,
regardless of economy, regardless of downturn. When you're looking for the person in a downturn economy that you can trust, you have to be the person that they can trust. What are the 2 elements of trust? Empathy and competence. They've
mm,
been demonstrating their empathy and competence not just in the house with the customers they serve, but on radio and on television and in the mass media that allows the majority of people to go, I have a general sentiment towards these people, whether I use them or not. And it's like usually always positive because most people aren't advertising to get reviled and hated. So When we have more people who know, like, and trust us compared to the other, that's why Gettle was so astoundingly powerful when Ken was taking in charge of that business
Mhm.
and doing the things that they trusted him to do as an absolutely world class operator. Now, the experience has changed since he has left the helm, but that's a perfect example of exactly why Gettle was so powerful. The same thing with Dewey Jenkins, the same thing with Brian Scudamore at 1-800-GOT-JUNK, and the same with all of our highly public clients that have done
Mhm.
hugely successful things in the home services space, right? Which I personally had nothing to do with, but I certainly learned from, right? And then carried on to my own clients who are experiencing the same meteoric success.
Yeah, absolutely. Would you say that radio and television are dead, as some people say, or are they just for these larger companies that must just be throwing money out the window? Because we all know digital is the only place to spend money, right?
Yes, allegedly. Yeah.
Allegedly. That's what I
Yes.
hear. What do you think?
Well, here's what I know based off of fact,
Mm,
and that's probably the safest place to have this conversation. So there's a number of people who study this and um, have been studying it for decades. Uh, two of those people are Benet and Fields out of the UK, which where the data is much more high quality than it is in America, where it's a lot more self-serving, depending on the company that is providing it. So let's look to the global landscape to get the proper measures, um, and pull this all in. So Nielsen is without a doubt the most accurate, most powerfully sound data in the world today for measuring the results of TV and radio. Now, a company called Comcast is, I think it's Comcast or Com something, I don't know. They've come along and they measure things in a completely different way with much more impressive numbers that are astoundingly false in a number of different ways that make them highly untrustworthy, but incredibly self-serving to OTT companies and streaming companies and all kinds of other platforms that are trying to justify their existence. So I'm going to put them aside, knowing that they are snake oil in a can. And let's go back to Nielsen. Now, Nielsen has this little thing called a personal people meter. I
PPM. Mhm.
often accidentally call it the purple people meter
Yep.
because that's a lot more fun. It's not purple and it doesn't measure people. What it does
It
is
listens.
it listens. It
Yes.
it picks up the subsonic pulse that is in every single radio station in America today,
Mhm.
right? And is able to measure, of course, the TV metrics that are coming through the wire. So ultimately, what we're hearing here is a statistical sample size that is usually 2 to 3 times larger than necessary to get a profoundly accurate result within a single standard deviation, which means that there is, without a shadow of a doubt, infinitely higher accuracy than anything you will see on any digital platform anywhere where they have discovered and have clearly articulated that there is more corruption than organized crime going on in digital fraud than there is in any other thing in the world. There's more money being made than that of the organized crime syndicates of the world. So you can imagine the corruption that you're involved with when you're trying to measure not whether how many customers actually showed up on your website this month. So let's recognize that for what it is and understand that we're using flawed data in digital to justify our existence and to justify our cost per clicks and all the other nonsense that is complete red herrings in us figuring out whether or not we're doing marketing right or
Mm.
not. And go back to the personal people meter where we have absolute astounding measurement without a shadow of the doubt accurate to know not only how long a person listens to a particular station, but how many stations they listen to, the gender mix, the homeowner mix, the population FICO score mix, everything that you could possibly um, put together in a combination of information is going to be astoundingly accurate. And over 50% at the very grossly low end, there's none that are actually 50%. They're all over, well over 50% of any population of the top 200 markets in America listen to the radio. So, do people still listen to the radio? Well, over half of the population does, and usually 75 to 80% of that population listens to the radio. And yes, there's lots of people who don't listen to the radio. Who cares? Right? There's also a whole bunch of people who don't drive cars. Who cares? If the majority of the population does, and we can prove it without a shadow of a doubt, I'm still putting my money in radio. You want to know why? Because for 6 times the cost difference and for 10 times the trust factor, radio is going to deliver a better quality message and receive a better quality message from the customer who has a higher trust factor in radio than social media as the next closest contender, with TV being much higher than that, of course, because of production costs.
Yeah. So I totally agree. What's really interesting now is um, people are having trouble knowing if what they see online is even
Mhm.
real.
Is even real.
It's quite possible a world leader, Putin or Trump, could be at a podium telling us that they're going to launch missiles.
Right?
We don't know for sure if that's accurate. I could almost guarantee you on television and on radio, it's not going to just happen because there's responsible people who are responsible for that broadcast, and it's generally going to be vetted. So I find when I'm on
Yes.
radio delivering a message for my clients, that radio listener, first of all, they follow that radio station and they trust the radio station. They trust
Compare.
that the information coming out of there is legitimate, s- just good quality information.
Yes.
And also, if you're on the radio, that says something else. It still does today because anyone can be online. Anybody. Not
Mhm.
everybody can be on the radio and television, primarily because it costs money. And there also might be a vetting process where the radio and TV station don't have to put you on there. And you can't say whatever you want to say. They can't. There's laws. So there is still a big difference. And I find it incredible that a lot of people have literally tuned out radio when most Americans tune into radio so much per week. I think the number's close to 87, 88% of all Americans listen to radio at some point during the week. And
That's right.
that seems astonishing, but if you think about it, maybe you're in your car,
Mhm.
you're listening to the radio. Maybe you're in a doctor's office. Maybe you're in the elevator. I mean, think of where you could be hit with it. It's
Yep.
all over at the salon.
Mhm.
Who knows? Maybe you're in an Uber. They have it
Mhm.
on. You might not listen to it, but the driver does. So you can actually be hit by it.
Mhm. You absolutely can. And we have to recognize that there is both passive and intrusive media forms. And we also have to understand that there is different emotional environments that we are in.
Mm,
When we're doom scrolling social media, we're in a different stage of mind than we are when we're in a car driving to work. Um, Radio has relevance because of its local nature, the sports, the traffic, the weather, and the local goings-ons of the universe around you and your immediate, in your immediate environment,
mhm.
and that's why radio tends to continue to be a relevant resource for an awful lot of Americans today. Well, when you're doom scrolling social media, you may get a bunch of impressions by zipping past, being zipped past, and the thumb is in the way of what you're trying to say, and you never actually get to say any of the things that need to be said. In radio, you're listening to the radio ad, whether you like it or not, right? Because they're in the car and they're not going anywhere. They could switch over to another station, and if you've got budget, you're going to be on that station too. Um, this isn't about like there are different strategies for different people, for different companies, and for different budgets. But when you're in a diverse budget, you've got a reasonable sized company and you've got a reasonable sized market. We can actually be on a whole bunch of channels. Now, the chances of you getting your media buy right your mass media buy right in that particular atmosphere is just shy of non-existent. You have equal as much, or if not a little bit higher chance of winning the mega ball um, lottery than you will to get your marketing mix right. We use software that specifically articulates what the cross cumulative traffic is of the same listener to the stations that we choose when we're making a media buy. The cross cumulative traffic is what actually makes you more potent because you're showing up in the same spot. You just got to ask yourself, do I want to convince 100% of my population 10% of the way that I matter? Or do you want to convince, I don't know, 25% of your population 100% of the way? And my answer is always going to be the better your message with the right frequency,
Mhm,
you're going to win the game every single time with all of the strategies from Checkup Pro to
mhm.
your direct mailer to your radio to your pay per
Yep.
click, because all of it matters. All of it is infinitely important in the right combination to get you maximum result for the least amount of money.
I totally agree. So I'm gonna flash this up really quick. This is a book that one of my clients wrote called "When Can You Do It?" He's in the insulation and solar attic fan business. A number of years ago, we started doing direct response radio with him. We
Mhm,
tripled his business in 3 years, 6 hours of long form radio in Houston, Texas,
mhm.
talking about the problems that could happen, talking about the company and so forth, and people would call for that appointment. So it was frequency, but it was also helping that customer or potential customer, the homeowner with a problem. And Tom, the owner of the company who was on the air with me, was always wanted at the house, pros and cons of that. So it worked so well, Ryan. When that technician went out to the house, they asked, "Are you Tom?" "Oh, I love Tom. He's great." And of course, they'd have to say, "Well, Tom couldn't make it." And we came up with a system, right? Where, well, unfortunately, Tom couldn't make it, but here we are. And
Tom trained me. Yeah.
yeah, Tom touched my hand right here because
Mhm.
Tom was you end up being a local celebrity,
Tom
and
was the brand. Yeah.
yeah, and so you become part of that brand. You're a celebrity, and they want you to come out and solve the problem because they've gotten to know, like, and trust you over that period of time on the radio. And
Mhm.
we weren't on every radio station. We weren't on 24/7. He didn't advertise anywhere else. I know home service companies. Some of these aren't big companies. Some of them are under $5 million. They put all their chips in radio for that slice. They don't need 5 million plus people in Houston. They don't,
Yes,
they couldn't manage it anyway, but they have that slice, and that's why some people may have never heard of that company, but it just doesn't matter.
that's right. That's right. It's much more potent for Tom to be trusted by the group of people that did trust him, and they'll refer him to the people who are looking for the same thing that those people have bonded with him on. This is good strategy. Showing up in the same place consistently, right? Well, Ishmael just posted yesterday, um, that you need to be consistent,
Mhm.
and I literally immediately responded back, and he was talking about marketing. I said, Ishmael, this is really good advice because it is. Consistency is king, right? Because it's now telling the person that they can rely on you. That's an empathetic play, right? And what's the first thing that people are looking for from their provider before they're willing to step in and engage you? Empathy, then competence, the two key ingredients to trust.
It's yeah, it's the whole safety factor.
It
Those
is,
those create safety. People want
right?
to be safe. They may not say it, but that's what they want. And they want you to empathize and they want you to be competent. And it's really interesting you say that. I've heard that many times, and that is something that we make sure we weave into the message as well because it's important. Instead of saying we're the best contractor in town and you need us, it's more
Right,
we understand your problem.
right.
And for 20 years, Tom's been studying this and helping people like
Right.
you in our community. That type of thing makes people feel really, really good. Um,
Mhm.
but I can see how most small businesses don't think about that. They're like, I just want to lead. Just want to lead. So I'll tell them I'm here. I'm telling them we can fix this, and that's it. Yours is certainly a philosophy, and it's a somewhat chemistry in what you do. It's a little of this, a little of that, not too much of this. not too much that and none of that, right?
Mhm.
Whatever that is. Because everyone is the same. And if they're, you know, 5% of the people are strange and they don't follow these things because they're psychopaths, you don't want them as customers anyway.
No, no. And look, you're gonna get those folks, and there's always gonna be knuckleheads, and no matter what you do, you're gonna have to face the knucklehead factor. We've been blessed to dial in the recipe with 303 home service clients. We're really quite comfortable and confident that we understand that the ingredient mixes have to change, the marketing mixes have to change
Mm,
depending on the market and the budgets. So if we're serving 100,000 people, that's a lot different than serving 1 million people. And how are we going to mix that to make budget? Right? Because at the end of the day, no one has an infinite budget to do this. So figuring out all of these components is the key to marketing. All the people who are obsessed with the ends without focusing and putting effort into the means are going to continue to struggle. And we care for them just as much, but we can't change a person's behavior until we change their belief. And until they're ready to put in the work that's necessary for their brand, sales activation, and presence to all work hand in hand,
mhm,
then there's nothing that we're gonna be able to do to to do something for them because they're going to be focused in on making their presence lead gen by shoehorning it in with as much money as they can possibly spend, and
yeah,
it's really hard to get out of that. That's like when you're addicted to heroin, it's really hard to kick heroin, right? And it this sounds, I don't wanna, come across as diminishing, to drug abuse or any of those other things. What I want you to recognize, and I want the world to recognize, is that addiction is about an addiction to dopamine, right?
mm,
And lead generation is about dopamine. And what you have with most digital marketers is a dopamine dealer, dope dealer, drug dealer, right? They're dealing dopamine. They're dealing that next hit, and some of them are saying, like, any kind of lead is a good lead, right? Because that makes me feel good because I can send a guy out and we can, like, make
yeah,
some revenue, right? Or we
yeah.
can
It
sell
seems
some
like
stuff,
there's
right?
activity going on.
Right. Busy work, not return work, right? But putting in the work and living a clean life and actually holding true to your value system, well, that takes work, right? Just
Mhm,
like a good marriage takes work and a great relationship with your kids takes work and caring for your employees takes work and serving your customers at the highest level takes work. All of that takes work, right? But we have this skewed, understanding of how we get there. And I respect where people are from because in 2015, I was them. I was that guy. I was the one selling dopamine, right?
yeah.
And when I realized that there's another path, it changed my life. So I think probably more than anything, a whole bunch of business owners need to go on a 12-step program on how to get themselves off the lead crack, right? And start realizing that there is a more safe, healthy, and um, positive way
Mhm.
to grow a business. Can you grow your business just grinding it out with lead flow and sales activation and all that? Sure, yeah, it's exhausting. And if that's you, cool, man. Like, just enjoy, like, your hard life. There's
Yeah,
I'm gonna take the easy train with the navigator who's gonna get me somewhere.
yeah. You can live on ultra processed food.
Yeah,
You're not gonna feel good. It's gonna be a grind, especially toward the end of your life.
there
If
you
you
go.
adopt a whole food, okay, so I'm more of a whole food kinda now I was on the junk food, so I get
Yeah,
it, kinda like you were talking about. You made a switch to, in business and philosophy and so forth. I was on ultra processed food, and that stuff, I'm certain, will kill you.
mm,
It's a drug in itself, but it's hard for people to move over, right, to the whole food or to what I like to consider, Ryan, the stuff that's always worked. So think about it. Thousands of years ago, we didn't have Fruit Loops and Pop Tarts. We
mm,
ate food from Earth. And it was obviously by design because it'd be silly. We had to survive. So
yeah,
the earth, provided what we needed, the sustenance.
absolutely.
Today, though, we can manufacture food
Yeah,
and we have the processed and ultra processed food, which they say is bad, which I totally agree. I now have moved toward a better lifestyle. I feel better and I'm eating better food. Going back to the beginnings. Well,
Yeah.
I see a lot of companies saying, there's a lot going on in this digital space. It's kind of busy and so forth. Maybe I should try some of the old traditional food, meaning
Mhm.
the TV, the radio. Um, I also love direct mail. That people still have mailboxes. It's a law in the United States, Canada, wherever you are, as long as they're not on strike in Canada. The mail will come almost
Mhm.
every day. I had to say that almost every
Indeed.
day. And people say, "Well, who reads the mail anymore?"
Yeah.
I People pick up their mail, and if no one's putting it in there but you have a better chance. If you don't think anyone's on radio, go on radio. If you don't think anyone's on TV, go on TV. Why wouldn't you wanna be on a medium where you could be one of the few in your space? It just makes sense to me.
We strategically actually do exactly that for clients who have a deeply saturated radio market. We'll focus on television.
Mhm.
Vice versa, if they're heavy on TV, we're going to focus on radio. We're going to find the gaps and stand out where we don't have to scream as loud into the area. Just like the whole food example, Jim, we also have the gym example. It's
Mhm.
like, why isn't my company big? Well, have you put in the reps? Well, what's the reps? That's the repetition of your message in the market until they need your thing. Well, the answer is no. I didn't actually go to the gym, right? I just want to be a big muscly guy
Yeah.
without
Without the
any of
work.
the
Yeah.
reps, right?
Yeah.
Well, maybe today I have this opportunity to connect with somebody who loves the gym and understands that, and goes, "Oh man, I haven't put the reps in."
Mhm.
'Cause you haven't, you just want the ends without the means,
Mhm.
right? We're not gonna win that way. Can you get big by using steroids? Yes, but that's steroids,
Ultra processed foods, right?
right?
It's
Ultra processed
it's
foods,
not the
right?
right way.
Right? Did you win or did you bloat something up enough to sell it to private equity? Well, all of this is leading to a thing, right? It's all leading to an exit of some sort,
Mhm.
and you can either have exited with a legacy or you can exit with your 12 to 10 to 12 times multiples.
Mhm.
We're in the midst of working on a project that is going to help people not only put in the reps, grow their businesses in a stable place, but also give them a path to exit that far exceeds what is
Wow.
currently available through private equity. And when I say far exceeds, I mean double. It's going to be sensationally better for the people ready to put in the work. Now, it's not hard work, it's just different work.
Mhm.
Why not be as efficient as you can to get to the result that you're looking for, and then partnering with other people who are gonna do the same thing without
Mhm.
giving up your business along the way.
I can't wait to hear the details on that. I know that'll be coming up soon.
Indeed.
Um, Ryan, thank you so much for joining me, Wizard of Ads. All of Ryan's information is located in the show notes, so feel free to reach out to him. And once again, my friend, thank you so much. I'd love to have you back on the program. How does that sound?
That'd be fantastic. Really enjoyed this.